Hello! We are going to learn how to knit the Boneyard Shawl today. This triangular shawl was the very first pattern that I ever knit over 10 years ago, and this is the shawl that started it all. All of my other West knit shawls all relate back to the shaping principles and all these techniques that I learned while knitting this shawl. So I'm going to show you how to cast on and work make one left and make one right increases, and then we're going to bind off. We'll try a couple different bind offs and just dive into the shawl world. If you've never knit a shawl before, you're in the right place. We're gonna cast on and get started, so let's dive in. Let's cast on the Boneyard Shawl. It begins at the top center of the shawl with a garter tab cast on. Then we're going to pick up stitches and increase at the center and at the wingspan edges of the shawl. This gray sample was knit with 3 skeins of West Wool Tandem, a DK weight wool. So choose your color and a needle size that's recommended for that yarn. And let's begin by casting on 3 stitches using any cast on method that you like. Knit those 3 stitches for 7 rows. So knit 3 and then turn around to knit the other side. We're going to work 7 rows total. If you hold the yarn in your right hand, we're going to keep on knitting, wrap the yarn around, knit 3, and then turn. As you turn, just be careful that the yarn doesn't accidentally slip on top like that. You want the yarn to hang at the bottom. And then as you knit, you wrap it around. 7 total rows. If you lose track of counting, we need to look for 3 garter ridges on each side of this baby rectangle. I see 3 garter ridges on this side and 3 garter ridges on this side. So I'm good to go. After you finish knitting those 3 stitches and you see 3 garter ridges, don't turn around. Use your left needle like it's a car going through a stitch tunnel. And look at that, I just picked up 3 stitches from left to right along the edge of our garter tab. Knit those 3 stitches. Now we have 6 total stitches. The pattern says to rotate to cast on. We're going to rotate a little bit to look at this cast on edge. We need to pick up and knit 3 stitches along this cast on edge, starting right here at the corner, close to our working tail of yarn. Dive in and get any 3 strands of yarn that you can find. Let's get one in the middle. Right here. Ooh, I just split the yarn. There we go. There's the whole stitch. Knit a stitch in the middle of the cast on, and then somewhere around here at the corner. There we go. That can be our 3rd stitch. It doesn't matter so much exactly which strand you get, but just get 3 stitches along the cast on edge. If there's any boo-boos, we can just hide them with this tail of yarn from the cast on edge later, so don't worry about it. You have 9 stitches. Turn to work the wrong side. Knit 3, and then purl 1. Place a stitch marker onto your right needle. Purl 1. Place another stitch marker. Purl 1 and knit the last 3 stitches. So you have stitches knit and purled across the wrong side row and a stitch marker sandwiching that center stitch. Turn to work row 1, right side. This is the point in the pattern where you can choose make one right and left increases or yarn over increases. I used make one rights and make one lefts in this sample to make a closed solid fabric. If you want yarn overs, you can have holes that decorate the center and edges of your fabric. Let me show you the make one rights and lefts first. Row 1, knit 3, make one left. To do a make one left increase, we need to pick up this ladder that's connecting this stitch and this stitch. Make one left. I left the front door open. Make one left. I left the front door open. You're going to go into the front of that ladder and then twist it. That's a make one left. Let me show that again. I left the front door open. We're going to pick up the stitch with the left needle. I left the front door open. Make one left, go into the front door, and then twist that stitch by knitting through the back loop. All right, now knit to the marker. There's just one stitch before the marker, so we just need to knit one, and then make one right. I'll be right back. I left the front door open for make one left. I'll be right back. Make one right, go into the back door. And then we twist that stitch for a make one right. Let's do that one more time. Make one right. I'll be right back. Go into the back of that little ladder and then twist it. Slip marker, knit one, slip marker, make one left. I left the front door open, and then twist that stitch. Sometimes it's a little hard to go into the back loop to twist that stitch. Sometimes I do this. I do a cheat. It's easy to go in here, and then when you hop it around to the back, ooh, there we go. I'm ready to twist that stitch by knitting through the back loop. Knit to the last 3 stitches. There's just one stitch, and then you're at the last 3. I'll be right back. Make one right, go into the back, and let's twist that stitch by knitting into the front loop. Knit the last 3 stitches. After row 1, you should have 13 total stitches. We're going to increase 4 stitches every right side row. If you want to place a stitch marker on this side, a split ring marker, you could place a marker on the right side to mark that right side of the fabric so that you don't get mixed up between the right side and the wrong side. But it's going to become more clear as we knit. This will become the right side with smooth knit stitches, and the wrong side is going to look more bumpy. Row 2, wrong side. Knit 3, and then purl to the last 3 stitches. As you purl across the row, you can slip the stitch markers as you reach them. Purling to last 3 stitches, knit the last 3. After you work rows 1 and 2, we're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 4 more times. Row 1, right side, knit 3, make one left. I left the front door open. Twist that stitch, knitting it through the back loop. Knit to the marker. Before you do anything with the marker, we need to make one right. I'll be right back. Twist that stitch, and then slip marker, knit one, slip marker, make one left. I left the front door open, so go into the front of that stitch and twist it by knitting through the back. Knit to the last 3 stitches, make one right. I'll be right back. Knit the last 3 stitches. Then you're going to work row 2, and we're already starting to see this little baby triangle form. So the center increases will give you the center point, and you have a nice wingspan edge forming as well. Always make sure that you have one stitch in between your stitch markers. As you repeat rows 1 and 2, if those make one rights and make one lefts are giving you a little bit of trouble remembering which one is which, you can substitute the make one right and make one left with a backwards loop cast on. So this is a really great increase to try, just twisting the yarn like this and putting it on the right needle. If you hold the yarn in your right hand, you can twist the yarn like this to make the backwards loop cast on, or just grab the yarn, give it a little twist, and pop it on the needle. And that's a backwards loop cast on. You could try that instead of a make one right and a make one left. We need to do another make one right before the center stitch marker. So try that backwards loop cast on instead. Ooh, I really like that. That's really quick and fun. And it doesn't matter which way you twist the yarn, really. Just twist the yarn, pop it onto the needle. Feel free to give that a try and see how it looks. Depending on your yarn, that backwards loop cast on might make a little bit of a space, a little bit of a hole, but it depends on your tension and yarn. So I would recommend giving it a try and seeing how it works for you. And again, if you want to follow the yarn overs, you can get a hole in your fabric by doing a yarn over increase instead as well. So choose your increase and follow rows 1 and 2, and you're going to make this beautiful triangle. And then every 12 rows, you'll notice in the pattern, for rows 11 and 12, on row 12, you knit on the wrong side. So that makes this garter ridge. These are the boneyard details to the Boneyard Shawl. So every 12 rows, you knit instead of purl on the wrong side, and that decorates the fabric. Really easy, and you just keep repeating over and over until you're ready for your garter stitch border. I just made a mini triangle, and I have my garter ridge on the 12th row, and I did another stockinette stitch section, and I worked a few ridges in garter stitch. So I'm ready to do a little border of my shawl. This is my little puppy bandana. So here's the border of the Boneyard Shawl with 12 garter ridges. You should do at least 3 garter ridges for the fabric not to roll when you finish your shawl. So you can do a thick garter stitch border or a thin one. And this is an I-cord bind off. It's a really smooth, thick edge that's quite flexible, but it just looks really clean to finish your shawl. So when you're ready to bind off on the right side, first we need to cast on 3 stitches. So go in between stitch 1 and stitch 2, dive into the middle gap, and pull some yarn through, and place it on the left needle. We're going to do that twice more. Go in between these first 2 stitches, pull some yarn through, place it on the left needle. One more time, dive in the middle of those first 2 stitches, wrap the yarn around, and place it on the left needle. We just cast on 3 stitches so we can bind off an I-cord. Knit the first 2, and then knit 2 together through the back loop. Slip those 3 stitches onto the left needle and repeat. Knit 2, knit 2 together through the back loop. Slip those 3 onto the left needle and keep repeating that. Knit 2, knit 2 together through the back loop. If you hold the yarn in your right hand, knit 2, knit 2 together through the back loop. Knit 2, knit 2 together through the back loop. You're going to do that all the way to the end of your bind off, to the end of the row, to get a smooth I-cord finish to your shawl. Whenever you bind off your shawl, you can just break your yarn and pull it through those last 3 stitches. And then you can weave in your ends at the end of the project. Whenever I weave in my ends, I just put my end through a tapestry needle and I just do a whip stitch on the wrong side of the work. I just whip through several stitches. And you can go back and forth, or you can go about 10 or 12 stitches worth of this whip stitch, and then just cut the yarn and your end is woven in on the wrong side. At the end of your shawl, once it's all bound off, what I like to do is soak it in water. I soak it in like cool, not too hot water, and you could put some wool wash in the water as well if you want. But soak the shawl in some water and then squeeze out the water, and then you can roll the shawl up in a towel to dampen the water out, and then just lay the shawl flat to dry. Lay your shawl on a rug or on a spare bed, kick your partner off the bed, he can sleep on the couch, or she can sleep on a little cot in the living room with the dog while your shawl blocks on the bed. The sacrifices we all must make. So enjoy your finished shawl. It's really quick and easy, and just keep increasing to make it as big as you want. Here is an overview of the Boneyard Shawl, starting at the top center with that little garter tab, 2 increases at the center, feeding into the fabric, and 2 increases at the edge, 1 here and 1 here. The increases happen every right side row, so remember, only increase on the right side for the Boneyard Shawl, and add that knit row on the wrong side. Every 12 rows, you get that knit row on the wrong side, giving you the bones of the yard. The Boneyard Shawl was named after the Boneyard Arts Festival. I put this shawl in the front window of my local yarn shop called Close Knit in Urbana, Illinois. I'll link to that shop in the description box down below. That's where I learned a lot of my knitting techniques, and the owner of that shop told me to write this shawl pattern out for the Boneyard Arts Festival. So that's a fun little story of how this shawl began, and all the shawls since this one evolved from it. But don't forget, at the center of the shawl with that spine, our Boneyard Shawl spine, there's just 1 stitch in between your stitch markers. Don't get any extra stitches in between those markers. It's like a grilled cheese sandwich, so don't get any pickles and tomato and lettuce inside that sandwich. We just got 1 slice of cheese, 1 stitch, always in the middle between those stitch markers. So the increases happen outside the stitch markers, and just keep repeating. I made this shawl with 3 skeins of yarn, of DK weight yarn, in our West Wool Pebble colorway in West Wool Tandem. So it's a DK weight wool, 3 skeins, makes a really good size, but you can use any yarn weight, any color, any weight to knit this top-down shawl. Well, that was so much fun. If this was your first shawl that you've ever knit, congratulations, you have 20 more shawls that you need to cast on now. So dig out those needles. You might need a couple other pairs of needles. If you want to try another pattern, you could try the Slumber Shawl. This is a worsted weight pattern using 4 shades that fade together. So it goes really quick, and it uses the exact same cast on that you just learned, that garter tab cast on, and some yarn overs, a little bit of texture. So it's taken those skills you learned and just introduces color and a couple other simple techniques. So very beginner friendly. And the Botanic Shawl. This is also one of my easiest shawl patterns to knit using fingering weight yarn. So you cast on this shawl at the tip, but then you knit sideways. So what I love about these shawl constructions that start so tiny is you can just make them as big as you want. Or you can bind off early for a smaller shawl. So if you just want to practice and swatch, cast on one of these shawls, you can bind it off early, pop it on your little chihuahua, and you have a matching puppy bandana for your pup, and you can make one for yourself too, and just live that full shawl life, okay? So whatever you do, especially these puppy bandanas, you need to share that progress on Instagram with #WestKnits, and there's a lot of other techniques and tutorials on this channel. You can check those out, and there's more coming soon. So I'll see you in the next video.